Kutumbakam. I am Gujarat.
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, UN calls killings of civilians in both Gaza and Israel horrific. UN chief says case for humanitarian ceasefire becomes more urgent with every passing hour. US President Joe Biden talks to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, says imperative to protect civilians in the course of military operations. Netanyahu terms it as a global battle against the axis of terror.
This is not a local battle. This is a global battle. The paramount need is to defeat this axis.
Ukraine says focus is on Black Sea grain deal alternatives. Day after attack on Odessa port. As war drags on, EU officials eye talks starting next year with Ukraine and Moldova. And Iga Swiatek returns to world #1 with WTA finals with over Jessica Pegula. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict, describing the situation in Gaza. Guterres emphasized on the need for a humanitarian ceasefire and increased aid to Gaza, stating that the crisis is not just a humanitarian one, but crisis of humanity. He also launched a $1.2 billion UN humanitarian appeal to assist Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Guterres condemned the violation of international humanitarian law and urged all parties to respect their obligations.
Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. Hundreds of girls and boys are reportedly being killed or injured every day. More journalists have reportedly been killed over a 4-week period than in any conflict in at least 3 decades. More United Nations aid workers have been killed than in any comparable period in the history of our organization. Today, the United Nations and our partners are launching a $1.2 billion humanitarian appeal to help 2.7 million people. That's the entire population of the Gaza Strip and 500,000 Palestinians in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem.
US President Joe Biden and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday discussed the potential for humanitarian ceasefires in the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. White House in a statement said that the two leaders discussed the possibility of tactical pauses to provide civilians with opportunities to safely depart from areas of ongoing fighting, to ensure assistance is reaching civilians in need, and to enable potential hostage releases. The US president reiterated his steadfast support for Israel and the protection of Israeli citizens from Hamas and all other threats, while also emphasizing on the imperative to protect civilians and reduce civilian harm in the course of military operations. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday said that Israel was engaged in a global battle against an axis of terror led by Iran. Talking to a group of foreign ambassadors in Tel Aviv, Netanyahu warned that the battle being waged by Israel against the barbaric Hamas terrorists in Gaza is one that could threaten Europe next.
The barbarism is led by an axis of terror. The axis of terror is led by Iran. It includes Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and their other minions. They seek to bring the Middle East and the world back to a dark age. They seek to torpedo, to derail any progress towards peace and the progress and the promise that we had in our budding peace treaties with our Arab neighbors. If they go strong, if they're not defeated, they will derail this process. They will imperil the entire Middle East. If the Middle East falls to the axis of terror, Europe will be next, and no one will be safe. This is not a local battle. This is a global battle. The paramount need is to defeat this axis. That battle is now being waged by us against Hamas in Gaza. There is no substitute for victory. We will defeat Hamas. We will dismantle Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel has allowed tactical little pauses. In a U.S. interview on Sunday, Netanyahu said that he anticipates Israel will have the overall security responsibility in Gaza after the war ends.
Well, there will be no ceasefire, general ceasefire in Gaza without the release of our hostages. As far as tactical little pauses, an hour here, an hour there, we've had them before. I suppose we'll check the circumstances in order to enable goods, humanitarian goods to come in, or our hostages, individual hostages to leave. But I don't think there's going to be a general ceasefire. It's not that I don't think. I think it will hamper the war effort. It'll hamper our effort to get our hostages out.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has wrapped up his second visit to Middle East since October 7th. Blinken said that efforts to secure a sustained humanitarian pause and greater constraint in Israel's retaliation on Gaza was still a work in progress. His comments on Monday followed a meeting with Hakan Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister, in Ankara. He will now head to a meeting of G7 foreign ministers in Japan, where he will brief colleagues on the U.S. approach to the crisis and its impact on Western standing. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying as the Israel-Hamas conflict continues to cause global concern. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Israel about the latest updates.
Israel has stepped up its military campaign inside the Gaza Strip. It took hold of a Hamas military compound, targeting at least 450 targets within the Gaza Strip. Now, Gaza Strip is a very, very narrow strip, 41 kilometers in length, at places 5 kilometers wide, at places 10, 12 kilometers wide, but that's it. It's a small place with a lot of people, 2.3 million people, and that's why you see such high figures. Till now, 10,000 dead, over 35,000 injured. So Israel says it is not ready for any ceasefire or humanitarian pause, even as Antony Blinken wound up his second visit to West Asia. He spoke both with the Israelis and with the Arabs. He was in Jordan, in Amman. He was also in Ramallah, where he met Mahmoud Abbas. Later, he traveled to Ankara, where he was categorically told that an unconditional ceasefire has to happen. So clearly, on the front of ceasefire or a humanitarian pause in hostilities, the U.S. diplomacy has not yielded to much, because Israel is not ready to listen. Yes, there is aid, humanitarian aid going inside the Gaza Strip, but UN officials say that is like a drop in the ocean, and that needs to be increased. The Israelis are amenable to that, but they say unless Hamas releases all hostages, they will not do a ceasefire. And Hamas is also saying unless the ceasefire happens, we will not release the hostages. So therefore, the situation here is stuck. Amritpal Singh for DD India in northern Israel.
At least one person was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Al-Shifa hospital complex on Monday in Gaza. The strike has also left several injured. Denying the allegations of the attack, Israeli spokesman further said that they did not deliberately attack solar power panels on the roof of a Gaza hospital.
למיטב ידיעתי בלוחות סולאריים בבית החולים שיפא, אבל אנחנו עוקבים אחרי האופן שבו חמאס עושה שימוש ציני במתקנים הומניטריים, והאופן שבו חמאס עושה שימוש ציני בניצול אנרגיה של מתקנים הומניטריים לתשתיות טרור, ואנחנו נפרק את העניין הזה כדי שלחמאס לא תהיה אנרגיה לתשתיות הטרור שלו. כוחות ההנדסה מגיעים לכל אחד מהפירים, מתקינים בכל אחד מהפירים אמצעים שונים.
The United States on Monday condemned as wholly unacceptable the comments by a junior member of the Israeli cabinet who appeared to voice openness to the idea of Israel carrying out a nuclear strike on Gaza. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday disciplined the cabinet member on the question.
a ceasefire right now would not prevent Hamas from continuing terror attacks and firing rocket attacks at Israel in the future. And on the contrary, it would let Hamas off the hook, allow Hamas enough time to regroup, and we can't allow that. And no nation can be expected to tolerate those kinds of conditions. But one thing we have been very clear about, both the Secretary and the President, have been the need for a humanitarian pause to enable a sustained flow of aid and voluntary movement of civilians seeking to depart. And we continue to believe that it is important for all sides of this conflict to refrain from hateful rhetoric that is going to further incite tensions.
And up next, we'll take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world with focus on Israel-Hamas conflict. As several countries recall their diplomats from Israel while its conflict with Hamas rages on, South Africa has recently joined the list. The African country said on Monday that it was normal practice and that South Africa planned to assess its relationship with Israel amid a rise in civilian casualties due to the conflict. Combating attacks from Lebanon front, Israel's military targeted Shiite terrorist group Hezbollah on Monday. Releasing a video showing 2 aerial views of targets being hit, IDF spokesperson said that the military will continue to have a significant response every time Israel is attacked. The retaliation came after a large barrage of rockets were fired at northern Israeli cities by the terrorist group earlier. In a display of solidarity, the walls of Jerusalem's old city were lit with photos of hostages held by Hamas. The faces of more than 200 Israeli hostages held by Hamas were projected onto the walls of Jerusalem's old city on the eve of 1-month anniversary of Israel-Hamas conflict. "1,400 candles were lit at Jerusalem's Western Wall in tribute to the 1,400 victims of Hamas-led terror attacks on October 7th this year. Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz was among the participants. In Tel Aviv, another visual took place in Habima Square, where tons of empty beds were presented in memory of hostages in the Gaza Strip. The event marked 1 month of the Hamas attacks and commemorated the sacrifices of the victims. Participants were seen sitting on beds, listening to singing and reading excerpts. All right, let's turn focus to Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Ukraine's foreign minister said that Ukraine would focus on alternatives to the Black Sea Grain Initiative on Monday. Speaking at a press briefing in South Africa, Dmytro Kuleba said that he did not see any encouraging indicators about the revival of the grain deal and Ukraine would increase exports through European land routes.
We focused on 2 alternatives. The first one is increasing the capacity, increasing export capacity by land routes through Europe. We see the biggest potential in the route that will take our grain to ports in Romania, Bulgaria through the territory of Romania.
As the war drags on, the European Union officials eye the talks starting next year with Ukraine and Moldova. Also, the European Union executive will recommend the bloc open membership negotiations with Kyiv once it meets the outstanding conditions on Wednesday. A senior Ukrainian government minister said that Kyiv expected the European Union to provide a positive appraisal of its progress on the path to membership in a report this week. Meanwhile, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Olha Stefanishyna, said that everything which has been agreed has been implemented and done in 7 steps assessment.
I think that for purposes of the assessment, when it comes to the 7 steps, everything which has been agreed has been implemented and done. Well, I would say that the assessment would definitely be positive because we have been in a permanent contact with the European Commission, discussing the steps and negotiating on the steps we've managed to implement. We were following the recommendations from the colleagues. We were listening to the opinions of the member states.
Up next, we're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Top diplomats of group of 7 nations to start talks in Tokyo. Talks to focus on Israel-Hamas conflict and China's increasing maritime activities. Trump testifies in civil fraud case at New York court, calls the trial real election interference. A rare spectacular natural phenomena shows up at two places. We tell you ahead what, where and when.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching the India News Hour and I'm Preeti. Up next, we get to more international updates. Top diplomats of the Group of 7 nations start 2 days of talks in Tokyo from Tuesday, the first such gathering since the Hamas attack on Israel. G7 leaders are also expected to exchange views on the conflict, as well as China's increasing maritime activities. Japan will host its second G7 foreign ministers meeting this year after the one in April. Also, Japan chaired the September meeting in New York. Japan condemns the terrorist attacks by terrorist group Hamas, and it plans to convey its call for a humanitarian pause as the Gaza district is on the verge of a serious crisis. The G7 foreign ministers are preparing to hold an online session with their Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, as well, during their meeting in Tokyo. All right, DD India correspondent Chris Gilbert joins us from Tokyo to spell out more details. Chris, good morning. When we talk of this meeting, then this is the second time Japan will be hosting the meeting, apart from the first session, which was held in April. Get us more on the significance, because we've just, as a backgrounder, told our viewers that the leaders will focus on Israel-Hamas conflict and also China's increasing maritime activities.
Yeah, well, Japan is looking to round out what it views as a successful presidency of the G7, the Group of 7, this year. It does have one more ministers' meeting coming up in December for the Interior and Security Ministers. But as you say, this is the second and last ministers or foreign ministers meeting being held in Japan this year. And look, it is looking to round out those issues you mentioned, helping and helping each other to maintain individual economic and diplomatic ties with China, while countering, as they say, any change to the status quo in the Indo-Pacific by unilateral acts of force, which is their coded way of saying no invasions, looking to reaffirm their support for Ukraine, as the G7 leaders did in May, very strongly and very clearly, and talking about how they can, further support Ukraine. In fact, Volodymyr Zelensky just the other week was saying that he was feeling a little bit forgotten about with all the brouhaha happening in the Middle East, and that, of course, is going to rocket to the top of the agenda as well. The Hamas attack had not happened when Yoko Kamikawa, the foreign minister of Japan, called this meeting. It is going to be, on the agenda, certainly, some kind of joint, statement about how the G7 wants to pursue, and also their concern is going to be any spillover conflicts in the Middle East as well.
All right. Also, we've seen that Japan has criticized the Hamas conflict in Israel. Spell out more details on the stance which Japan is taking on the issue.
Yeah, Japan's foreign policy can fairly predictably be, it's fairly close to the US on most issues, and this is no exception. It immediately after the attack expressed its solidarity with Israel. It did condemn the Hamas attack. It has since contributed 2 lots of humanitarian aid to Gaza, now totaling about $75 million US. One place where the US and Japan does differ is, as we heard earlier in the program, the US is reluctant to call for any kind of ceasefire, but would want to have a humanitarian, a pause for humanitarian aid to get through, whereas Japan would want to see more of a truce, a stop in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. So a bit of a stronger stance from Japan. But look, just here, just like in many democracies throughout Europe, the UK and America, there are protests happening, and they're getting stronger all the time in support of Palestine and in support of the, as the UN says, 10,000 people who are now dead from these bombings in the Gaza Strip.
All right, Chris, thank you for joining in with those details. And let's turn focus to US now. Donald Trump has called a civil fraud case in New York as election interference during his testimony. The former president of the United States clashed with Judge Arthur Engoron on Monday in the Manhattan courthouse. Trump is accused of inflating his wealth to secure better loans from banks. If he loses, he could be banned from doing business in his home state. Sally Patterson gets us more from New York.
Judge Engoron has already found Donald Trump, his adult sons, and some of his inner circle at the Trump Organization liable for fraud. Now he's trying to determine what damages the former president should have to pay. New York Attorney General Letitia James is also seeking to cancel Trump's business licenses in her state. And that could lose him many of his companies, including Trump Tower behind me. Donald Trump is accused of stating his apartment here was 3 times bigger than it really was. Similarly, prosecutors say his Mar-a-Lago resort in the U.S. state of Florida is worth somewhere between $8 and $27 million.
I had no idea what the numbers were when they said $18 million for Mar-a-Lago, and it's 50 to 100 times that amount by any estimation.
Trump said it was worth more than $400 million. Trump and his sons, who testified themselves last week, have sought to shift the blame onto their accountants. They say that banks should have verified their financial statements themselves rather than just relying on what was given to them. Trump also claims, as he does with several other cases he's facing across the United States, that the proceedings are politically motivated and designed to keep him out of the White House. He's running for president in 2024. Now, taking to social media on Monday, Trump called the case one of the many that's been instigated and brought by his political opponents, quote, crooked Joe Biden, for purposes of election interference. Speaking outside the court, Trump's lawyer, Alina Haber, she called Donald Trump one of the best presidents America's ever had, who has built a great company. She said that it's actually worth far more than the statements suggested, not less. She stated that the country is falling apart and called for an end to corruption in courtrooms, where attorneys, she said, are being gagged. Now that comes after the lawyer was told to sit down by the judge in the courtroom, who also demanded Donald Trump actually answer the questions being put to him rather than making long and at times rambling statements. This is a courtroom, he said, not a political rally. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Democratic President Joe Biden trails Republican frontrunner Donald Trump exactly a year before the U.S. election. Results of a poll showed that 5 out of 6 swing states favor Donald Trump over Joe Biden for the president's post in 2024. Those states are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. Wisconsin was the only swing state to show Biden ahead of Trump. Biden defeated Trump in all the 6 states in 2020, but Trump now leads by an average of 48% to 44% in those states, the polls showed. Millions of Americans are headed to the polls today, and while off-year elections don't normally draw massive turnout or attention, with less than a year to go before the 2024 presidential election, this vote is being watched very closely. Tony Waterman has more on this.
Tuesday's elections will serve as a sort of crystal ball for 2024, a bit murky, but also yielding valuable insight into voter mindsets. Abortion rights in particular have been dominating the most closely watched races, including in Virginia, where the entire state legislature is up for grabs. A Republican win would clear the way for Governor Glenn Youngkin to enact a number of conservative policies, including a 15-week ban on abortion, with some exceptions. Democrats have been heavily campaigning on the issue, but so too has the governor. He's been trying to reframe this image of the GOP as extremists on abortion after more than a dozen Republican-led states outlawed the procedure. He calls a 15-week ban reasonable, and a number of other Republicans, including 2024 presidential candidate Nikki Haley, have also been trying to reframe this issue as well. In Kentucky, Democrat Andy Beshear, who is fighting to keep his job as governor in a red state, has also leaned on the issue. He has called the state's ban extremist and is reminding voters that he vetoed a 15-week ban on abortion. In Ohio, the issue is actually on the ballot. Voters in the swing state will decide whether to enshrine abortion rights into the state's constitution. The outcomes of these votes will be closely scrutinized by both parties, a litmus test on whether abortion is still a winning issue for the Democrats and if Republicans need to adjust their messaging heading into 2024. In Austin, Tony Waterman reporting for DD India.
Britain's King Charles will deliver his first King's Speech today as he outlines the government's policy and its agenda for the upcoming session of Parliament. He is expected to announce proposals for new oil and gas licenses as well as changes to criminal justice and housing. Julia Chapman gets us more details from London.
This will be the first state opening of Parliament since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. A year and a half ago, Charles, then the Prince of Wales, delivered the Queen's speech on his mother's behalf. But this is his first King's speech since becoming monarch. It's also the first for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who came to power a little over a year ago and whose legislative agenda will be laid out by the King in Parliament. Criminal justice is expected to feature heavily, with legislation expected to be proposed on introducing tougher sentences for rape and other serious crimes. The speech will set out plans to rent places in prisons outside the country and to require convicted criminals to attend their sentencing hearings. Other areas are likely to include a staggered smoking ban, reform of the leasehold housing system, and a possible new football regulator. Although he's unlikely to betray any unease, there is one policy that could be difficult for environmentalist King Charles to announce. That is a plan to introduce annual auctions for oil and gas extraction licenses. Ministers say that will ensure jobs are maintained and that Britain has secure energy supplies. But critics say the government is backsliding on environmental commitments. The policies unveiled on Tuesday will set the tone for the ruling Conservative Party in the coming year and pave the way for the next party manifesto ahead of an expected general election. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
The European Space Agency announced on Monday that it would hold a competition between firms to build a ship to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. It would be a potential first step towards independent missions carrying astronauts. The ESA's 22 member states, whose space ministers were meeting at a two-day summit in the Spanish city of Seville, also agreed to provide financial support for Europe's long-delayed Ariane 6 rocket. Europe also faces growing competition not just from the United States, but also newer players like India and China, as well as private companies such as billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX. A quick break ahead, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. In midst of a series of earthquakes, India sends second aid contingent to Nepal. We will tell you about C.V. Raman's extraordinary journey as we celebrate the laureate's birthday today. Aiming to empower local artisans and promoting sustainable fashion, a natural dyeing workshop conducted in Srinagar by EcoCash. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DT India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. UN calls killings of civilians in both Gaza and Israel horrific. UN chief says case for humanitarian ceasefire becomes more urgent with every passing hour. US President Biden talks to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, says imperative to protect civilians in the course of military operations. Netanyahu terms it as a global battle against the axis of terror. Ukraine says focus is on Black Sea grain deal alternatives day after attack on Odessa port. As the war drags on, EU officials eye talks starting next year with Ukraine and Moldova. And Iga Swiatek returns to world number 1 with WTA finals win over Jessica Pegula. The air quality across India's capital, Delhi, and the national capital region continues to be in the severe category on Tuesday. While Delhi recorded air pollution levels 7 to 8 times above safe standards on Monday, schools in the capital have been directed to suspend physical classes except for classes 10th and 12th until November 10th, the odd-even car rationing system returning from November 13th till 20th to combat severe air pollution. The Supreme Court of India will hear the petitions regarding Delhi air pollution. On October 31st, the Supreme Court directed Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan to file affidavits listing measures initiated to control air pollution. The top court had noted that efforts to curb it in the national capital were not reflecting on the ground. The top court said that statistics reveal significant reduction in stubble burning events in Punjab and Haryana. It, however, added that statistics can sometimes be deceptive and ruled that air pollution problem was persisting year after year. To spell out more details on this, we will be joined in by our correspondents from Delhi. And as we speak, we tell you that the air quality across Delhi and the NCR region is in the severe category. And also, we've been telling you and getting you live coverage of how the air quality has been deteriorating. To spell out more details on the current status of the air quality index in the national capital, we're joined in by Dibendu Mondal. And to also spell out more details on Supreme Court taking up the topic of air pollution today in Delhi, we are joined in by Vikas Sarthi. Good morning, both of you. Dibendu, to begin with you, is the morning air better today in Delhi?
Well, good morning, Preeti. It doesn't look like, because the air quality in Delhi is still under the severe category. At 8 p.m., the CCTV data shows that the air quality index in Delhi is above 400, which is severe category. Keeping this in mind, the Delhi government has taken steps which includes the shutting down of schools, because remember, air pollution affects children and elderly the most, because they have a developing lungs. And the poor air quality, specifically the PM 2.5, which is above 400, is very hazardous as per the WHO norms, which is approximately about 8 times more than the standards that the WHO has recommended. So keeping this in mind, the government has taken the steps to shut down schools. But remember, Diwali is just days ahead. And the stubble burning in the neighboring state of Punjab still on, which could also further deteriorate the air quality. But however, there seems to be a silver lining with the Met Department predicting that a western disturbance could hit the northern part of India, which could bring some spell of rain. And if that happens, remember, then the pollutants could settle down and Delhiites could breathe fresh air again.
All right, Dibendu, from here I'll bring in Vikas Sarthi. Vikas, you spell out more details because we've told our viewers that the Supreme Court will be taking up Delhi air pollution, and it had in fact on October 31st asked some states to file affidavits with regard to the steps taken to control air pollution. Get us more on this.
Good morning, Preeti. So Supreme Court has been hearing this case for almost a decade now. We are witnessing that in every year in November, the air quality index went very poor. This time also, Supreme Court has taken note of the present scenario in Delhi NCR. And in fact, Supreme Court has asked Delhi particularly and the neighboring states that what steps they have taken so far to improve the situation of air in Delhi NCR region. before that, Supreme Court had given several directions, several orders in the past, including that the farmers in the neighboring state, particularly in Punjab and Haryana, should be given technology and incentives so that they don't burn stubble in their farms. And we have seen that there has been a reduction in those cases, but still the number are very large. The number are very huge. Stubble burning cases are still being reported. And today we expect that these states, Punjab and Haryana particularly, will give a detail that what is the exact data, what are the statistics. If we compare it with the previous years, has there been any significant reduction in the number of stubble burning cases or not? Delhi government will file its affidavit on what steps it has taken, whether they are related to sprinkling water on the busy roads, and what is the plan for the coming days, since we are just a few days we are just few days away from the Deepavali, and in fact the government is also of the view that this level of pollution may go further, and because of that now they have decided that odd even policy will be implemented just after the Deepavali. So what is the current status? We will be able to know through the detailed affidavit filed by the states of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab and Rajasthan as well. Preeti?
All right, Dibendu, coming back to you again. Now, we've told our viewers how different measures are being taken by the Delhi government, like sprinkling of water, application of odd even, and also at the same time, schools have been shut for physical classes. Any word of caution ahead for the coming few days for the people, for the Delhiites in particular?
Well, we have been speaking to doctors as well as environmentalists, and all have been saying that outdoor activities, especially in the morning hours and in the late evening hours, should be avoided because the pollution level increases during this point in time, and outdoor exercises, especially by people in the outdoor area, should be avoided at this particular time. Apart from that, as I said, the western disturbance, as predicted by the Met Department, says that there could be some rain in the coming days, and if that happens, Preeti, definitely the pollution levels are going to settle down, and the air quality will likely to be improved in the coming days. But having said this, it is very important to watch and see how the coming days unfold, because remember, the stubble burning is continuing in the neighboring states of Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, and the Supreme Court has also taken cognizance of it, and it is only a matter of time that we still keep a close watch on the development with this hazardous air quality in Delhi.
All right, Dibendu and Vikas Hate, thank you both of you for joining in with those inputs this morning. We'll come back to you again during the day to get more when the Supreme Court will hear the petitions regarding Delhi air pollution. Let's turn focus to other updates now. Another earthquake hit Nepal on Monday, soon after search and rescue operations ended for the 6.4 magnitude earthquake that hit the region on 3rd of November. The focus has shifted to providing essential aid such as food, shelter and medical care to the survivors. The disaster has caused at least 157 casualties and left more than 200 people injured. 16,570 houses have been destroyed due to the earthquake in Rukum Paschim district of Nepal. This number might increase as data collection is still underway in the district. The highest number of houses have been damaged in Athbiskot municipality of the Rukum West district of Nepal. And as Nepal tries to rebuild itself after last week's earthquake, schools are reopening in Jajarkot and Rukum West. The earthquake, which came last Friday with 6.4 magnitude, has completely damaged over 90 schools, while over 120 schools were partially damaged due to the quake in 2 districts. The second consignment of emergency relief for earthquake-affected families in Nepal has been handed over by India. 9 tons of relief material were transported to Nepalganj by a special Indian Air Force aircraft. The relief material consists of essential medical and hygiene supplies, tents, sleeping bags and blankets for earthquake-affected families. Now, this is part of the government of India's efforts to support the government of Nepal in the wake of the earthquake in Jajarkot on 3rd of November. Malaysian Foreign Minister Zamri Abdul Kadir, who is on a two-day visit to India, is scheduled to co-chair the 6th India-Malaysia Joint Commission meeting in New Delhi. The Joint Commission meeting will review the progress of enhanced strategic partnership with Malaysia in the area of political, defence, security, economic, trade and investment, health, science and technology, culture, tourism and people-to-people ties, and will also discuss regional and multilateral issues of mutual interest. Later in the day, Malaysian Foreign Minister will be meeting Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, followed by a meeting with his Indian counterpart, Dr. S. Jaishankar. In the realm of physics, one name shines brightly: Chandrasekhar Venkataraman. Born in Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu on November 7th, 1888, Raman's journey from a young prodigy to Nobel laureate is nothing short of extraordinary. On his birthday, let's remember the man whose achievements in 1930 led to the Nobel Prize in Physics for unraveling the Raman effect.
In the heart of Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu, a brilliant mind was born on 7th of November 1888. Chandrasekhara Venkata Raman, or popularly known as C.V. Raman, a name synonymous with the groundbreaking physics which forever changed the way we perceive the world around us. Born to a school teacher, Raman's early academic brilliance led him to graduate at the tender age of 16 with a BA from the prestigious University of Madras. At just 18, he published his first scientific paper in the British Journal. Professor Raman's illustrious career included a full professorship at the University of Calcutta in 1917 and knighthood by the British in 1930. In 1933, he became the first director of the Indian Institute of Science. He founded the Indian Academy of Sciences the same year, and in 1948, he founded the Raman Research Institute in Bengaluru. The crowning achievement came in 1930 when Professor C.V. Raman was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his groundbreaking work on the scattering of light and the discovery of the Raman effect. The Raman effect, a rare phenomena where only 1 in a million scattered light particles exhibit a change in wavelength, has found applications in diverse fields, from studying materials in chemistry and physics to telecommunication and nanotechnology. Professor C.V. Raman's legacy lives on as his pioneering work continues to inspire and shape the world of science and technology. Taposh Bhattacharya's report, TD India.
And up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. Polling is underway in the northeastern Indian state of Mizoram to elect the 9th Legislative Assembly. Over 8.5 lakh eligible voters will decide the fate of 174 candidates in the single-phase polling. The first phase of polling for 20 seats in the state assembly is underway in the central Indian state of Chhattisgarh. There are a total of 90 legislative assembly seats in Chhattisgarh, of which 20 seats will be witnessing the polls in the first phase, while the remaining 70 seats will undergo polling on November 17th. The Indian National Investigation Agency has filed a charge sheet against 2 in espionage racket operating from across the border. The supplementary charge sheet was filed on Monday. Investigations revealed that the accused was sharing classified information related to the Indian Navy with a suspected Pakistani intelligence operative. Further investigations in this case remain in progress. EcoCash, in association with Roots, an environmental organization, organized a natural dyeing workshop in North India's Srinagar on Monday. The workshop aims to empower local artisans and promoting sustainable fashion by showcasing the use of natural dyes in textile production. Keraliam Food Festival, the 7-day extravaganza in South India's Kerala, comes to an end as today marks the last day of the week-long festival. The festival aims to be the biggest celebration in Kerala of not just the cultural heritage but also of art and trade, with an attempt to showcase the progress Kerala has made so far. The aim was to present the best of Kerala to the world. Up next, a short break, but stay with us to get to know more about the latest on 2 of US's biggest strikes: UAW strike against Detroit, 3, and Hollywood actors' disagreement. Meta to bar political advertisers from using generative artificial intelligence ads tools. And in the Cricket World Cup, Australia will clash with Afghanistan today. Both teams play on the back of victories in the last games.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get to updates from the world of business now. The United Auto Workers Union announced that its members at General Dynamics in Michigan, Ohio and Pennsylvania have voted to ratify their tentative agreement. The ratification of the tentative 4.5-year contract, which provides a 14% wage increase, inflation protection, shortens the time it takes to reach the top of the pay scale, and defeating the company's proposed health care concessions, was approved by 74% of the members. The deal has put an end on more than a month-old strike in October by the union against the Detroit 3 automakers in the United States. Responding to the latest offer by the major studios, the Hollywood Actors Union SAG-AFTRA said on Monday that they have not been able to come to an agreement on a number of issues, including the use of artificial intelligence. With this, Hollywood Actors Guild strike entered its 117th day. The union said that the moderators representing Hollywood actors, after reviewing the offer, have formally responded to the major studios' last, best and final offer. The union also posted a statement on social media saying that they are committed to getting the best deal possible and ending the strike in a responsible manner. The union members walked off their jobs in July, demanding higher remuneration in the streaming television time and security around the use of artificial intelligence.
They're ongoing. We're at the table all day, every day, and we are trying to get this strike resolved and get the town back to work. We're in the business of telling stories, and that's what we want to do every day. So it has grind to a halt for a few months, and so we're going to try our best to get things up and running and get the output back up for our fans too.
On Monday, Facebook owner Meta announced that it has prohibited political campaigns and advertisers from using its new generative AI advertising products. The announcement was made in updates posted in its help center. Currently, its advertising standards restrict ads containing content that has been debunked by the company's fast checkers, but have no specific rules on artificial intelligence. The policy change comes a month after Meta officially announced that it is expanding advertisers across to its AI advertising tools. Now, these tools allow advertisers to instantly create backgrounds, edit images, and change the ad copy in response to simple text prompts. Last week, Google also announced the release of similar image customizing generative AI ads tools, but with a caution to keep politics out of its products by prohibiting the use of a list of political keywords as prompts. U.S. stocks closed on a slightly higher note on Monday as investors waited for guidance this week from a range of Fed policymakers concerning the central bank's policy direction, with huge bond supply due in the coming days. As the U.S. employment report on Friday fell short of expectations, equities posted their biggest weekly percentage gain in almost a year and sent Treasury yields lower on the view that Fed has stopped raising interest rates and could start cutting them next year. The S&P 500 gained 7.64 points, while Nasdaq Composite gained 40.5 points. In a fresh blow to German restaurants and hotels, the government is set to end the pandemic-era tax breaks for the hospitality industry. The German government reduced value-added tax, that is VAT, to 7% for restaurants in order to support them during the pandemic lockdown, but that will be increased up to 19% by the end of this year. The German Hotel and Restaurant Association said that some 12,000 businesses could close if the VAT rises. Furthermore, at supermarkets, VAT is due to remain at 7% for prepared meals. Egypt's tourism minister said that the government is proposing incentives to boost its tourism industry in southern Sinai on the Red Sea, where the fallout from Israel-Hamas conflict has so far been limited to less than 10% of the bookings. He further said that despite some delayed reservations for the end of the year, Egyptian tourism was on track to earn more than $13 billion this year and reach a target of 15 million visitors. In order to retain the airliners and retailers' commitment, Egypt was offering an extra $500 of incentives for each flight that landed in Sharm el-Sheikh, while the rating agency S&P 500 Global cautioned that the drop in tourism as a result of the ongoing conflict might cause severe problems in Egypt, Jordan and Lebanon. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is scheduled to meet with Chinese Vice President He Lifeng in San Francisco this week. The meeting, that is scheduled for November 9th and 10th, attempts to deepen a fledgling economic dialogue between the world's two largest economies. It will also convene the new economic and financial forums launched last month by the Treasury and China's Finance Ministry and Central Bank. The meeting will take place just before U.S. hosted Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders and Ministers Summit scheduled from November 11th to 17th. The main aim of this meeting is to gain a better understanding of how the new U.S.-China economic communication line will work. All right, from business on to sports now. Australia will square off with Afghanistan in the 39th match of the ongoing ODI World Cup at Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. Australia made a dismal start in the ongoing tournament, suffering defeats in their first two games. However, the Pat Cummins-led side changed a stunning comeback, winning 5 games in a row to take a claim in the top half of the table. A win in the upcoming game will help them secure their spot in the semi-final of the competition. Afghanistan, on the other hand, are coming off with 3 consecutive wins, beating Pakistan, Sri Lanka and the Netherlands, and are currently standing 6th in the points table. The Hashmatullah Shahidi-led side will eye for a win in their upcoming clash to push for a semi-final qualification. In tennis, Swiatek regained her world #1 ranking on Monday. She dominated Jessica Pegula 6-1, 6-0 and won the season-ending WTA finals in Cancun on Monday. Swiatek ends the season on an 11-match winning streak and will finish the year in the top spot for the second year in a row, having lost the position to Sabalenka after the US Open. The 22-year-old Polish tennis star collected 6 out of her total 17 career titles this season as she retained the French Open crown to lift her 4th Grand Slam trophy. All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.